My name is Veltharaxis, and I was the third living being in 500,000 years to set foot on the planet called Earth. I did not know that when I stepped out of the landing craft. I only knew that my boots sank into soft green grass, and that the air smelled like rain that had not yet fallen. I remember thinking, this is not what a dead world is supposed to smell like. I am a xenoarchaeologist. My work is simple to explain and hard to do well. I study the things other species leave behind, and I try to understand who they were before they were gone. I had studied 100 ruins before this one, burned cities, broken moons, empty stations drifting with no lights and no names left to read. I thought I understood what an ended civilization looked like. I was wrong about this one from the very first moment. Our ship, the Hollow Chorus, belongs to the Consortium of Drifting Spires, a loose alliance of species who share star maps, trade routes, and old stories. For thousands of years, every map we owned marked one region of space with a simple symbol that meant, nothing here, do not enter, no signals, no light, no life. Sailors called it the Silence. Some species treated it as a grave. Others treated it as a warning. My own people, the Asherai, taught their children a small rhyme about it, the way your people might teach children not to swim too far from shore. Nobody expected to ever go there. Nobody expected there to be anything left to find. Our captain, an old and careful being named Dorith Kai, was ordered to finally chart the Silence properly, now that consortium ships had grown strong enough to survive whatever had caused it. I was assigned to the science team almost as an afterthought. I had asked for the assignment for months. My colleagues thought I was chasing ghosts. I suppose, in a way, I was. We dropped out of transit space at the edge of a solar system with one yellow star and a handful of quiet planets. My scanners were already running before the engines had fully stopped, because that is simply what I do. But for a full 10 seconds I did not understand what I was looking at. There were ships. Thousands of them. Tens of thousands. They floated in slow, wide rings around the third planet, arranged with a kind of order that made my hands go still on the console. Not scattered like wreckage. Not clustered like a battle frozen in place. Arranged. Spaced with care, like beads on a string, like something built to be looked at as much as to be used. Their hulls were dark, but not dead. Small lights blinked along their sides in patterns too even to be random. "Captain," I said, and my voice came out smaller than I wanted it to. "I need you to see this." Dorith Kai came to stand behind me. For a long moment neither of us spoke. Then she said the only thing that made any sense at the time. "Those are warships, Vel. Hundreds of thousands of years old, by the look of the corrosion patterns. And their lights are still on." I had studied dead fleets before. I knew what 500,000 years should do to metal, to circuits, to hope. It should turn all of it to dust and shadow. It had not done that here. The ships hung in the dark like sentries who had simply chosen, out of some private stubbornness, to keep standing long after everyone had forgotten they were there. We were still deciding whether to send a signal when the signal came to us instead. It arrived on every channel our ship could receive, all at once, gentle and unhurried, as if it had been waiting a very long time for someone to be listening. My translation system struggled for a moment, then caught hold of a language pattern, then another, cycling faster than any of our systems could normally manage. Later I would learn the beacon held over 900 languages in its memory, including 3 that my own people had lost track of so long ago that we no longer remembered we had ever spoken them. When the translation finally settled into words I could read, this is what appeared on my screen. "This is Earth. We didn't leave forever. Wait for us, or come find us. Either way, welcome home, whoever you are." I read it 4 times before I said anything out loud. Then I turned to Dorith Kai and said the only honest thing I had. "Captain, I don't think this is a grave. I think it's a doorway." She gave the order to approach carefully, weapons quiet, shields raised but not aimed at anything. As we moved closer, the ships in that vast ring did something that made 3 members of the bridge crew reach for their harnesses out of pure instinct. They turned, slowly, gracefully, to track our approach. Not with hostility, with attention. As if a very old dog had lifted its head at the sound of a familiar step, only to find a stranger's face instead. None of them fired. None of them moved to block our path. They simply watched us come, the way a house watches visitors walk up its front steps. We were given permission, by whatever mind ran that fleet, to descend to the surface. I volunteered before Dorith Kai had even finished asking for volunteers. I told myself it was professional duty. It was not only that. I wanted, more than I had wanted anything in my short career, to know who had built a doorway that stayed open for 500,000 years. The landing craft that carried myself, 2 crewmates, and a small support drone touched down in what had once been a wide green field at the edge of a city. I stepped out first, because I could not make myself wait even the extra 10 seconds it would have taken to let protocol run its course. The grass was real, living, soft and green, cut short as if someone tended it, though no one had walked there in longer than my entire species had existed. Trees stood along old paved paths, their branches heavy and unhurried, the way trees grow when nothing has ever cut them down. In the distance, towers rose against a pale sky, their glass windows catching the afternoon light in a way that made the whole skyline look, for one strange moment, alive. "There should be dust," said Ren, one of my crewmates, a quiet engineer with 4 careful eyes. "There should be broken glass. There should be something that looks like 500,000 years. There was none of that. The city stood the way a house stands the morning after its family has only stepped out for the day, waiting for feet on the stairs, waiting for the sound of a door. We had barely walked 100 paces down the old path before we met the first caretaker. It rolled toward us on quiet wheels, a machine perhaps as tall as I am, built with a kind of gentle roundness that made it look less like a tool and more like a small patient animal. Its surface had the soft shine of something recently cleaned. 2 lights near its top brightened when it saw us, the closest thing to an expression I had ever seen on a machine. "Welcome," it said, in my own language, without a single moment of hesitation, as though it had known exactly which words I would need before I arrived. "It has been a long time since anyone walked this path. Would you like some tea? The kettle only takes a few minutes." I laughed before I could stop myself, a short, startled sound that echoed strangely against the quiet buildings. Ren looked at me as if I had lost my mind. Perhaps I had, a little. 500,000 years of silence, an armed fleet the size of a small moon, and the first thing offered to us was tea. The caretaker introduced itself as Warden 7, one of many such machines built to look after the city while its people were away. It led us inside a low building near the edge of the field, a place it called simply the Welcome House, built, it explained, specifically for a day its makers had hoped would come, and had never been entirely certain would come at all. Inside, the air was warm and smelled faintly of old paper and something sweet I could not name. Shelves lined the walls, filled with objects that Warden 7 called records, though they took forms I had never seen. Thin bound stacks of paper, small discs of shining material, devices that lit up softly when touched and showed pictures of human faces, human hands, human children laughing at something none of us would ever fully understand. "You have questions," Warden 7 said, settling near a low table as though it too might rest if it wished to. "Everyone who has ever come this far has questions. I will answer as many as I am permitted to answer. I asked the only question that mattered. Where did they go? Where are the people who built all this?" The lights on Warden 7's surface dimmed slightly, in a gesture that felt, impossibly, like sorrow. "They left," it said, "but they did not leave because something drove them away. They left because something called them forward." Over the next several hours, in that warm, quiet room, Warden 7 told us a story I have spent every day since trying to properly understand. Long ago, by our measure of time, though not so long ago by theirs, humanity had reached a point that many young species reach. They had explored their own solar system fully. They had built cities in the clouds of one world and beneath the ice of another. They had, in their own words, run out of room to simply wonder. Then something arrived at the edge of their awareness. Warden 7 would not describe exactly what it was, only that it was vast and old, and offered humanity a choice rather than a threat, a doorway outward, toward something far larger than any single solar system could hold, an invitation to step past the edge of everything they had ever known. Humanity did not decide lightly. Warden 7 showed us records of long arguments gathered from every corner of the world, voices raised in hope and fear in equal measure. In the end, they chose to go. Not all at once, and not without leaving something behind. They built the fleet. Not as a weapon meant to fight some coming war, though it was certainly strong enough to defend itself if it ever needed to. They built it as a promise. A guard for the home they were leaving, and a lighthouse for whoever might one day find it. Every ship in that vast ring above us had been given one simple set of instructions, repeated in the record so many times that I could recite them myself by the end of that day. Guard the cradle. Welcome whoever comes. Tell them we will be back. They did not want to frighten anyone who found this place, Warden 7 explained, and they did not want anyone to feel obligated to defend an empty house that was already perfectly capable of defending itself. So they built the silence, on purpose, around their own world. Not a wound, a curtain, A quiet room left dark so that no one passing by would be drawn into worries that were never theirs to carry. I sat with that thought for a long time before I could speak again. 500,000 years, I finally said, and the ships still fly, the lights still burn, the tea is still warm. How? Warden Seven's lights brightened again, a little proud, a little fond, because we were told to wait, and we are very good at waiting. Every few centuries, part of the fleet wakes fully, checks its own systems, repairs what needs repairing, and sends a report outward, toward the people who left. Then it settles back down to watch, and to hope that the next set of footsteps on this grass belongs to someone new. Someone like us, Wren said quietly. Someone like anyone, Warden Seven answered. That was always the point. I want to tell you that I stayed calm through the rest of that day. I did not. I walked through empty streets with tears blurring my vision more than once, though I could not fully explain why. Perhaps it was the size of the patience I was standing inside of. Perhaps it was simply that I had spent my whole career studying endings, and here, for the first time, I had found a beginning that had simply been paused, folded neatly, and left waiting on a shelf for 500,000 years. We visited what Warden Seven called the Long Room, a quiet hall near the heart of the city built entirely for a moment exactly like ours. Its walls were covered with messages, left by the last generations of humans before they departed, addressed not to any one visitor, but to whoever eventually came. Some were written in careful formal language, official greetings meant for governments and leaders who did not yet exist. Others were simple, almost shy, the kind of thing you might leave for a stranger you hoped would understand. One message, near the center of the room, had been placed at a height meant for a child to read without help. It said only this: "We hope you found this place kindly, and we hope you feel free to stay as long as you like. The porch light stays on for everyone." I have read that message more times than I can count since that day, and it has never once failed to catch in my throat. Dorith Kai joined us on the surface the next morning, along with a small delegation from the consortium, cautious diplomats who had spent the night arguing about protocol while Wren and I had spent it walking silent streets under a sky full of unfamiliar stars that had once, impossibly, been humanity's own night sky too. The diplomats asked Warden Seven the questions their training required. Was Earth a threat? Was the fleet under any command that could be provoked? Were there hidden weapons meant for unwary visitors? Warden Seven answered every question with the same gentle patience it had shown me, and to every question about danger, it gave the same simple answer. We were never meant to be feared. We were meant to be found. It was on the second day that the fleet finally moved. I do not know exactly what triggered it, whether it was the presence of the hollow chorus in orbit, or some quiet signal passed along by Warden Seven, or simply the slow turning of some ancient internal clock that had been counting down since before any of us were born. One ship, larger than the rest, drifted gently out of its place in that vast ring, and turned its long, dark hull toward the stars beyond the system. For one terrible heartbeat, every crew member on the hollow chorus braced for the worst. Nothing fired. No alarm sounded. The ship simply opened, along its entire visible length, a slow bloom of soft golden light, and released what our sensors described only as a tight, precise burst of transmission, aimed with total confidence at a point far beyond our star charts, out past the edge of anything the consortium had ever mapped. "It is sending word," Warden Seven told us afterward when I asked with my hands still shaking slightly from the sight of it. "It always does this when visitors come and stay long enough to be truly welcomed. It tells them, out there, that someone has finally walked up the path again." "Tells who?" I asked, though I think some part of me already suspected the answer. "Them," Warden Seven said simply. "The ones who left. They are still out there, Veltaraxis. Still moving outward, still building, still remembering exactly where home is. This message will take a long time to reach them, longer than either of us may live to see answered. But it will arrive. It always does, eventually. That is the whole point of a lighthouse. It does not need to see the ship it is guiding. It only needs to keep the light burning until the ship arrives on its own." I thought about that for a long time afterward, standing on a low hill at the edge of the city, watching the golden light fade slowly from that departing ship as it settled back into its silent, patient formation among the others. Somewhere, unimaginably far away, in some corner of the galaxy none of our maps had ever properly charted, a message was traveling outward that would one day tell an entire scattered species, someone finally came home to check on the porch light. I do not know what humanity looks like now, 500,000 years past whatever door they walked through. I do not know if they still remember, in any personal way, the exact color of this sky, or the exact smell of this grass after rain. Warden 7 could not tell me that, and I did not truly expect it to. Some things are simply too far away to answer, even for a machine built with such astonishing patience. But I know this. I know that a species faced with the choice between a great unknown and everything they had ever loved chose not to burn their bridge behind them. They chose, instead, to build the sturdiest, gentlest, most patient bridge imaginable, and then they simply asked it to wait. On our final evening on the surface, before the Hollow Chorus prepared to carry our reports back through consortium space, I sat alone for a while in the welcome house, drinking a second cup of tea that Warden 7 had insisted I try, a warm golden drink it called simply an old favorite. Around me, the small lights of the room glowed steadily, unbothered by the passing of centuries, unbothered by the vast dark distance between this quiet room and whatever future its makers were now living somewhere far beyond my sight. I opened my personal log, the one I keep for myself rather than for any official record, and I wrote a single line, because it was the only line that felt true enough to hold everything I had seen. We came looking for a grave. We found a porch light, still on. When the Hollow Chorus finally lifted away from that green and patient world, I watched through the viewport as the ring of ships fell back into its familiar shape below us, thousands of quiet lights blinking their slow, steady patterns against the dark, exactly as they must have blinked every night for 500,000 years, waiting for the next set of footsteps to find their way home. I do not know when that will happen. I do not know if it will be my own people who return one day, or some other traveler entirely, drawn in at last by a silence that was never truly silent, only patient. But I know that somewhere below us, Warden 7 and its quiet companions are still keeping the kettle warm, still tending the grass, still watching the sky with the same gentle hope they were given so very long ago. And somewhere impossibly far beyond the edge of every map I have ever known, a message is traveling outward through the dark, carrying 4 simple words toward a people who have never stopped moving forward. Welcome home, whoever you are. I think, of every ruin I have ever studied, of every ending I have ever tried to understand, this is the only one that never actually ended at all. It simply stepped outside for a while, and left the light on, certain that one day, someone would come to see it burning. I intend to be there again, when that day finally comes.